Take a listen to this lineup: Charlie Papazian, Denny Kahn, Drew Beecham, Rodney Kibsey, Gordon Strong, John Palmer. These are just a few of the 90 rock stars speaking at this year's HomebrewCon, June 28th through 30th in Portland, Oregon. Join them and join us, but you've got to register to meet your Beeros. Visit homebrewcon.org to sign up. That's homebrewcon.org to sign up. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, March 29th, 2018. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Liz and Michael Preston of Prestonrose Farm and Brewery in Paris, Arkansas, join us to talk about the brewery that they've built in their front yard and how they're enticing people to come from miles around and converting locals to great craft beer and locally grown organic produce. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows, our DVDs, our brewers' logbooks, and other Basic Brewing gear. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook as well. We have a cool Basic Brewing app on iTunes and Amazon.com, and we're found all over the place where fine podcasts are served up. And if you do us a favor of rating us on iTunes and maybe leaving a nice comment, they say that'll help new listeners to find us. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. This past Monday, I released a supporters-only video of my latest brew session. I brewed up a 30-minute post-boil, hop stand-only beer, similar to the one I called a 30-minute New England IPA. So I boiled for 30 minutes and then shut off the power and added hops. In this one, I cut back a little on the two-row and added a couple of pounds of flaked rye. And so I'm hoping that will accentuate the hoppiness of the beer, as in the beer that we like so much in the Adjunct Experiment from the D.C. Homebrewers Club from a few shows ago. I didn't dry hop the previous beer, but I'm strongly considering doing so in this one just to see what happens. I got some feedback on YouTube comments on the previous beer saying something like, this isn't a New England IPA because it doesn't have adjuncts, or this isn't a New England IPA because it's not got enough hops in it, and such as that. I think it's kind of funny and ironic that a beer, quote-unquote, style that evolved from rebelling against style is already being boxed into the confines of a style. But I guess that's inevitable that would happen. And in fact, the Brewers Association recently added hazy or juicy categories to their style descriptions. So I guess it's an indication of the popularity of the hazy movement, first of all, and an indication that brewers are trying to kind of wrap their minds around what those beers actually are. I had a couple of delicious examples of hazy beers while on spring break up in the state of Washington. One was from San Juan Island Brewing called The Haze, which was very drinkable and delicious. And the other I found at a grocery store, Phaser Hazy IPA from Ecliptic Brewing in Portland, Oregon. Both were delicious beers. In my opinion, my little 30-minute homebrew I thought it measured up pretty good to those two. Of course I'm biased. But, I guess you'll have to brew it yourself to see for sure. If you want more hops in it or to throw some adjuncts in there, please do. Let me know how it turns out. We got a new sponsor, Imperial Organic Yeast. They're the yeast that used to be in the little cans, but now Imperial has a new, easy-to-use pouch. And in that pouch are 200 billion cells of yeast. That's the highest cell count of any liquid yeast producer. Proper pitch rates are easy to hit, making starters virtually unnecessary for 5-gallon batches of standard gravity wort. And I can testify that to that myself. Imperial yeast is just ready to go right out of the package. My stir plate is getting dusty. And I'm using liquid yeast a lot more than I used to because I don't have to worry about making a starter. Imperial is the only manufacturer of certified organic yeast in the world. With an industry-leading QC program, Imperial also has top-notch customer service. If you call them, you can actually talk to a person to answer your questions. How about that? And here's something else exciting from Imperial Organic Yeast. they're sponsoring an annual BJCP-sanctioned homebrew competition called the Kreuzen Cup, which will be held May 12th this year. The Kreuzen Cup is capped at 300 entries, beer only, no mead or cider, because the best-of-show winner will have the opportunity to come to Portland and brew with Beerlick Brewing. The resulting beer will be Beerlick's entry into the GABF Pro-Am competition. How exciting is that? For more information, go to imperialyeast.com/Kreuzencup. That's imperialyeast.com/KRAUSENCUP. So good luck to everybody who's entering in that. And thanks to Imperial Organic Yeast for their support. I'm very excited about that. I use Imperial all the time, as you see on our videos and such. And I'm just thrilled with the quality of the beers that I get out of it and the promptness of the fermentation. So thanks, Imperial Organic Yeast. Let's take a look into the mailbag. Tyler from Dallas writes, I may have just had my first homebrewing disaster, though thankfully not as bad as some of the stories on your show. All very educational, Tyler says. Tyler says, I have a Three Floyds Gumball Head clone in my fermentation chamber right now, as well as a raspberry porter, which have been sitting in secondary. I was going out of town for the weekend, so I moved my Gumball Head, that's a wheat pale ale, Tyler says, from primary to secondary and added my dry hops. In the process, I turned the temperature controller off in order to keep the fridge from turning on. Of course, this was my hopefully not fatal mistake. Tyler says over the course of the next 24 hours, it rose steadily to 90 degrees. And over the following 24 hours, it remained at 90, raising as high as 91. Tyler says he has the whole thing logged. Tyler says, I'm planning on serving the beers, one of the beers in a few weeks. Tyler says, my quick bit of research tells me I should be worried about fusel alcohols from this temperature. However, it was only during secondary that this has happened. Do you have any advice on how to fix this? Well, I wrote back to Tyler saying that since the beer was in secondary and that primary fermentation had completed, he might not have to worry about, fusel off flavors from a stressed fermentation. But I'd be more worried about the hop flavor and aroma, which might have taken a ding, spending a week, was it at 90 degrees Fahrenheit, since, hoppy beers like to be kept cold to preserve that hop freshness. And I said, if it was less hoppy than he expected, maybe more dry hopping might compensate, even though, whenever you dry hop, there is the risk of adding oxygen as well. Tyler wrote back, I sampled the beer last night, and it wasn't bad. It's good news. I was less worried about it after a bit of research. The sample I pulled off had a good hop aroma as soon as I pulled it out, and it still had good hop flavor. Tyler says, I don't plan on dry hopping it again, as it seemed to be great last night. I might have noticed some slight, very subtle fusel alcohol notes, but that may have been purely psychological. I plan on letting it sit at 60 degrees from here on out until I put it into a keg this weekend. Well, that's good news from Tyler. It sounds like a disaster averted. I hope the beer is as delicious as he hopes. Let's have a word from our sponsors, Desiree and Dave from High Gravity in Tulsa. I brewed that 30-minute beer that I talked about, that 30-minute boil beer that I talked about earlier in the show, on my 240-volt electric brew in a bag system from High Gravity with the Warthog EBC 130 controller. Using this system came in handy in more than one way on this brew. First of all, I was able to maintain my mash temperature rock steady in the mash mode on the EBC 130. And to appreciate that, all I have to do is think back on the days of my plastic cooler or, wrapping the unheated kettle in blankets and towels when I first got into brew in a bag. But then, because I used a couple of pounds of flaked rye, the mash was very sticky, and I can think of other electric systems, which will remain nameless, where that would have been a disaster. However, I was able to squeeze the grain bag in the metal insert to collect the wort without issue. And then, of course, being able to accurately dial in the power level helped me keep the strength of the boil that I desired without having to babysit it. If you're not into brew in a bag, High Gravity has a variety of turnkey systems and standalone controllers to suit your needs from 5 gallons all the way up to 2 barrels. Check all them out at family-owned and operated highgravitybrew.com. And if you use the code EBC75BB, you can get $75 off your electric brewing gear purchase, EBC75BB. That's all at family-owned and operated highgravitybrew.com. Okay, I had a very good time talking to Liz Preston and her husband, who just goes by the name Preston. Kind of like Cher or Moby, he's a single namer. And they're living the homebrewer's dream. They have a commercial brewery in their front yard. It's a 1-barrel system in a shed that they built on their organic farm. And they built a tasting room, too, which is pretty cool. Liz does the brewing, and she's gaining fans from far and wide and changing the beer palates of those who live around her in rural Arkansas. This is the most complicated introduction I've ever done in my whole 595 episodes, or however long this is.
There you go.
Okay, here we are at Prestonrose Farms near Paris, Arkansas, with Liz Preston.
Hello.
And Preston.
Hello.
Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you for coming.
Now we're here. You guys have quite the story. Who wants to tell it?
Oh, from start to finish, or just from when we started here in Arkansas? So we moved here with the hope of having an organic farm and a brewery, and it turns out we could do that. So here we are. The first 3 years here, we're operating a certified organic farm, primarily for the purpose of selling organic food at farmers markets. About the end of 2014, I went through American Brewers Guild certified brewers training, so I hold that special piece of paper. And we just started planning our brewery right away as soon as I was finished with schooling. It was a brewery and planning special kind of section, and I did brewers science and engineering. Finished with that certificate, went right into applying for ABC permits, and it took about a year to get through ABC and TTB and build our little garage shack out there. We started with a coast-to-coast carports building and modified the inside of it into a fermenter room and a walk-in cooler. We have a 1-barrel brewing system from Ruby Street, and it's the Alpha system. We just started brewing. We were ready February of 2016, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
We had beer, and it was in kegs, and we were ready to do it. We were a little bit chicken.
Got a little push from Fossil Cove.
We did. We had some encouragement from Fossil Cove to join them at their first Frost Fest.
Oh, wow.
So we went there, and it was absolutely bonkers. It was wall-to-wall people, first of all, and it was our first beer festival behind the counter. And we had a lot of really positive feedback for the beer, so we just said, what the hell, and we came back and opened the next week. We were going to wait 2 more months, but we opened from there, and we rolled up the little garage door out there and installed a screen and cut a hole in it, handed out samples, sold growlers, and for the first solid year, that's the way we did it.
We did not have a table. We didn't have a chair. We didn't have a bathroom, so it really was samples and growlers to go. And she made 100 different unique beers that first year, and we sold every drop, 3,000 gallons, 6,000 growlers we sold in the front yard.
Yeah, and we haven't said where we are. We are in your front yard.
Yes.
We're here on the farm. Some would say we're in the middle of nowhere, but I'm sure that y'all think that you're in the middle of everywhere.
Everywhere, somewhere.
So where do your customers come from? I mean, how do people find you, and what kind of? I mean, you're closed today, so I don't have the benefit of meeting the clientele,
Sure.
but who are your customers? Who are you brewing for?
You know, we intentionally opened and restricted our distribution and our reach to this area because we knew that there was a definite absence of craft beer in our neighborhood and definitely in our county. So we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know who our customers were going to be. We just said, hey, we have a brewery and we're open. We very quietly said so on Facebook. That was the only announcement that we made was through our page. We were fortunate that we had a few followers from farmers market customers and people that we knew through our farming and through local foods projects that we had been doing. So we had a small following, about 1,000 people, so we got a tiny word out. And really after that, it was word of mouth. So on average, our customer drives about 45 minutes to come and see us. We've got plenty of regulars, and actually we've converted some Busch Light drinkers and some folks who didn't, they just kind of wandered up the dirt road and said, I saw a sign that said brewery and I didn't believe it. So we've gotten a lot of regulars actually that way. We do have neighborhood folks that are craft beer fans, but because the population's pretty small, the actual number of people who are craft beer fans is a little smaller, but our first year we had people driving over once or twice a month from Tulsa. We've had people drive down from Memphis. We definitely have people visiting us every weekend from Northwest Arkansas and Little Rock.
We only have maybe 15,000 people that live within a half an hour of us. And half of those just don't drink beer for other reasons. So.
Or they do so quietly. But yeah, they do come from everywhere, and we've had a lot of people responding. We do have not an ad, but we have a place on Google Business. So if you Google us, our Prestonrose Farm and Brewing spot on the map comes up. So we do have the occasional traveler going down I-40 that says, where's the closest brewery? And they're 20 minutes off the freeway from one. They don't entirely believe it until they actually walk through the door. And we still have people drive all the way up the driveway, make it all the way around to the house, and think they must be in the wrong spot. And they turn around and leave.
Before we can catch them, we try and run and catch them. No, this is right. But sometimes they just keep going.
Chasing them with growlers.
That's right. We have beer. We have beer.
And we still get people, as full service as we are now, we still have people who will sit here for an hour and drink beer and then quietly ask us as they leave, you guys have are you legal for this?
Is this bootlegging? Are you guys bootlegging?
They think they're at some really fancy moonshine still or something. I'm not sure what, but we definitely have a lot of curiosity brings people here. And now that we've started food brings a lot of people here. Our neighbors really appreciate a different take on restaurant food, and the way we feed people is definitely as local as possible. During the season, it's everything that comes off our farm and neighboring farms for meat and other supplies. So I think people they get a kick out of it, and they really are proud to have something like this in their neighborhood. So I think above all, we've probably garnered the most hyper-local support from that, from local pride and a deep appreciation that we kept our business and our commerce here. So.
And we still have people every weekend. I have a couple of people, I live a mile down the road and never knew you were here. And they're like, how long have you been open? 2 years. And like, no way, you've been open 2 years. Yeah, we have been.
So what grows on the farm?
Yes. She grows just about everything. She grows 5 kinds of potatoes, 5 kinds of okra, 20 kinds of tomatoes, 15 kinds of peppers. She's grown cotton. She's grown tobacco. She's grown hops, peanuts, watermelons, muskmelons, grapes, blackberries, yes.
No purple whole peas.
Everybody
grows purple whole peas, so we grow black-eyed peas. Everything is heirloom, so we don't grow any hybrids or anything like that. And we've really tried to focus on a lot of the southern heirlooms that have been forgotten, and we use a lot of seed banks that are dedicated to that purpose. So it's been really interesting.
So how much of it winds up in the beer?
A good portion of it during the harvest season. It's hard to grow things that are palatable in beer in the winter because, collard greens, I don't think. But could be.
Last month you made roots.
I made a Saison, or actually it was a Belgian. A Belgian Abbey, and incorporated beets and carrots into it. That was pretty pleasant. So there are a few things you can do, but in the summer it's just a free-for-all. There's herbs and edible flowers, and I've yet to successfully do a tomato beer, but it's on the list. So.
She came out one day last spring, and the whole farm was just covered in dandelions. So she picked every head on the farm and made a dandelion IPA. I mean, it's that kind of thing that she can do. It's amazing.
I've had a dandelion wine before. Home brewer Don Osborne sent one in, and it was really good, actually.
Well, dandelions actually serve pretty well as a bittering agent, it turns out. So I dried them and then used them as the first hops in a beer and made, and that was the bittering hop. I didn't use any bittering hops in it, and it worked out pretty well.
Was that the greens or the flowers?
The actual flowers themselves, the yellow petals, and it really made a beautiful color too. So
Prettiest beer she's probably ever made.
bright yellow, and not as bitter as a hop, but they do bitter as they boil. So it was pretty pleasant.
So do you have a weight ratio of how much, if you're going to do a dandelion bitter
How many
beer?
dandelions I need?
Yeah.
Nope.
Did you write it down?
How many are on the farm that day? I haven't, because it was a one-time experiment last year. I haven't been able to. I really need some child labor out here. Something. It takes a long time to pick all the dandelions that you see, and so we may experiment with that a little bit this year. What I've tended to do in the past is, if I want to use a strange or new ingredient from the farm, I'll buy something organic that I can buy in bulk and kind of measure out and see which ratios I prefer, and then blow my crop on it. Same thing with hops. We do grow a few hops, and so we really like to, if we use those hops, we like to make sure it's a beer that we're confident in and have used the recipe for before. So, because once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, no, I've grew hops for several years and had some struggles with it.
We're not the right spot for it.
No, up in Northwest Arkansas. So, and I've had some tips from a hop expert since then. Now that I've torn them up, but now that I've pulled them up from the ground. So, have you had success in growing hops down here, and what varieties like it down here?
Well, I haven't found that it's a one particular variety kind of thing. I actually took to buying rhizomes from a place in North Carolina. So somewhere that's successfully grown them that's more in the southern area of the country. We're just not at the right latitude. They say minimal latitude is 36.5 degrees or 36 degrees, and we're at 36.5. So just barely able to be in the hop growing area. And it's an hours of daylight thing. They're plants. They'll grow.
They smell good.
They smell
really
good. And what I've read and now found proof in the pudding of is that they don't develop alpha acids the same way that they do up in the northern latitudes. So we grew Zeus, which is a high alpha CTZ variety, and it smells wonderful, and the aroma qualities are great, and they do bitter a little. And we haven't had any analytics done on them, but I'd be willing to bet that they're down in the Cascade range as far as alphas go. So they're just not as powerful a bittering hop, but I think of it the same way people think of grapes or anything else that are different in different territories, and it's our terroir. So I'm kind of hoping that people can embrace that as we add to our hop yards and more people grow hops in Arkansas.
Yeah, my Cascades did the best at my house. German and English varieties did not like it at all.
No, I like fog.
But I found that they wanted to grow as quickly as possible, and they'd shoot up and put on cones, and then they'd fry out in the sun.
Yeah.
So this hop expert said what you want to do is cut off the first shoots,
right.
To delay them coming up, and that way maybe they'll have more of a chance.
Lower to the ground when they're doing their big growth phase. Sure.
Yeah. So anyway, maybe if you baby them more than I did, you can get some better hops.
It took a good 4 years until we had our first, and really the happiest plants. There are probably a dozen of them, and we pulled about 15 pounds of hops off of them last year. So wet weight, obviously, but. Yeah, I just did one big wet hop batch we called it fresh hop, I think. Yeah. It was tasty. It was a nice beer. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, speaking of nice beers, let's start talking about these. We got a flight of 6. Yes. What do we got here?
Our first one is Heritage Pale. It's in the style of an American Pale Ale, and it's made with heritage malt from Riverbend Malt House in North Carolina. And it's Heritage is just the name of their malt. That's what they've called it. It's from a heritage barley, and they have their own reasons for naming it. But it worked for us. It fits in with our whole heritage crops and small farms and family-oriented places. So we're pretty happy with it. It's a single malt and 3 hops. So I kind of rotate depending on availability. Hops are not always the easiest thing at small scales to get my hands on. So, and I do use all whole cones because my system will only tolerate that. I'll use pellets for dry hopping, but our pumps and chiller like to get clogged up with those little pellets. So we use only whole cones, which again limits it even further what I can find year round. But similar hop schedule every time we make it, and it was our first flagship, I guess you could call it. Still feels silly saying we have a flagship beer sitting in my front yard. But we do make it all the time. It's on as much as we can possibly keep it on. And it is out at a few accounts around town. We have, I think, a grand total of 5 now. It's on tap over in Fort Smith, and it's on tap at a coffee shop that roasts the coffee for a porter you'll have later. And it's on at the East End Sports Pub, which is a little sports pub. That's as much as I'll say. Outside of Paris. And you can buy, I think he's still stocking Heritage over at Vin de Paris, which is a little bottle shop and wine shop and cigar shop in Paris that has a growler station. So growler station is something we didn't think we'd see Paris have at any point, but we are proud to be a...
Once we were open about a year, the owners came to us and asked if we thought it was a good idea, and we said, yeah, people are buying this beer, and so we had a pretty good influence on the community. I think I don't think that shop would exist without us. And the same with the East End. The East End didn't have anything but cans and bottles for years. And again, right about our 1-year anniversary, the owners came to us and said, do you think this is a good idea? And we told them, heck yeah. And now they have about a third of their bar is for craft beer. They got 6 or 8 taps, and they made it very nice. Very nice. So
You've infected the area down here.
Love it or not, yes, we have.
And then the other place that our beer's at is at the Fox and Fork in Clarksville. They're good friends of ours. They have a restaurant over there. They make all the sourdough bread that we use for all of our dinners on Saturday and Sunday, and then they have our beer on tap as well. So I think that's pretty much it.
Those are the regulars. We've kind of spread it out and done little deals every now and then. We'll go over to Water Buffalo and say, hey, let's do a swap, or he's got our beer on every now and then. Nolan does, and we just recently took some up to Creekside Tavern up in Siloam Springs. And that's when we went and saw Casey. So you saw our picture with Casey then. We were visiting to drop off a keg of the Citra Wit that you'll have here later. Well, you can't get that there anymore. I guess they told me it lasted 28 hours. So they're ready for more, but that's as far out as we've gone.
Maybe I think maybe Flyways had a keg once or twice, and Stone's Throw has had a keg once or twice, but we really only have 4 accounts, and they only get 1 keg a week. If it's gone by Tuesday, they don't get any more until the next Monday. We have to keep our beer on the site, or we'll run out here.
So that begs a question. But before I ask that, this you said that this is just one malt beer, but it's what would you call that? A deep copper color? It's pretty for just a single malt beer.
It's pale. It's not very pale, is it? It is their answer to a almost a caramel 60, somewhere in there. It's not super dark. They started out about 8 or 9 Lovibond, and then it bumped up to about 15 or so over time, and this is the way my system treats it, and it comes out this color. But the caramel flavors definitely are a nice feature of that malt, and I feel like it gives us a lot of complexity of flavor and nice color without having to complicate it with a bunch of different malt. So.
And it's got plenty of diastatic power, I guess. It's got plenty of enzymes.
It does. We use about 75 pounds a barrel, and it's a 6.3 ABV. So we get it, and we use a California ale yeast, so pretty neutral yeast, and standard American pale hops. So otherwise, everything that says anything different in that beer is all the malt.
It's delicious.
Thank you.
Where should we go next?
Well, I would actually have you pick the next one here. Yep. That is Heritage Pale again, but I dry hopped it, which you might smell. So it's got a little bit more on the nose, a little bit of flavor that you didn't have before, but the only difference, that was the same batch, and the only difference was they got split out and dry hopped.
And what are the dry hops?
I believe I dry hopped with Cascade. I'll have to go back to my notes. That's the hard thing about making. We really only have 3 taps that stay the same, and even those rotate a little. And then the other 3 taps, sometimes 4, are different every week. So it really is as much variety as we can possibly get in there. We like for people to be able to say that if they're going to make the trip out here once or twice a month, or the next time you come back, you'll get to try a whole new palette of beers. And so it's kind of become our thing, and people get excited.
The result of that is she's made about 200 unique beers in the last 2 years. So it's pretty amazing. People ask us, which one sells the best. I'm like, they all sell in about 3 shifts. That's how long a barrel of beer lasts.
They all go away.
That's right.
I'm getting there's some melon. I'm getting usually grapefruit is what I get. Mostly from Cascade, but I'm getting some melon flavors in there too.
I might go back to my notes. It may be a different than Cascade hop. But
I'm not calling you a liar, Liz.
No.
I'm just
Like I said,
I'm just saying that it's a delicious beer, and just that one change, changes the character.
Oh yeah, and like I said, they were brewed at the same time, so it's pretty amazing. Just one little hop change will do.
Wow. So if you're running out of beer already, maybe I should talk about this while Preston's out of room. But he's back.
Hey.
But when do you upgrade your system? When do you get the bigger toys?
It is coming. It is in the works, and so you passed a big old barn on your way in as you rounded the bend there. That barn will be converted into a 15-barrel brewery, and probably the first year we'll stick with production only there. The intention is for Prestonrose to become a venue where it's not just a brewery where you go drink and go home, but we'll offer event venue options for folks. We'll have weddings here, we'll have larger parties here and things like that. Eventually, we'd like for there to be little cabins for people to stay if they travel from out of town. We really have a broad spectrum of projects planned, and
Teaching.
4 hands to do it with. But
So you're not going to stay small and quaint very long. It doesn't sound like.
we'll be medium-sized and quaint.
Yeah, she makes about 15 barrels a month right now, and to go to a system that makes 15 barrels in the morning is going to be quite an expansion as far as that's concerned. But as far as the experience here, we're hoping to keep it exactly like it is. We'll do some classes. We'll do some beer making classes. We'll do some cheese making classes, tofu making classes. Maybe bring people in to learn how to do the organic farming so they can pick our weeds.
Yeah, there's your labor for your dandelions.
That's right.
Yeah, we really it's a nice experience, and when this little room that we're sitting in is packed wall to wall with people and everybody's having a good time, there really isn't a comparable experience. It's the reason we chose one big long table rather than several small ones. We really wanted to embrace the neighborhood kind of European pub style atmosphere, and I think we're pretty close. So we get that compliment quite a bit, and every time we're open over the weekend, a lot of people will come to us and say, I was a little uncomfortable about sitting next to people I don't know, and I didn't know about this whole one table thing, and I met somebody that I didn't know before, and now I have a new friend, or maybe not, but at least a different conversation than they thought they would have coming here.
And you might break down some barriers between people that might not like each other over social media, or
we've actually had some folks sitting in here from very different political sides that are involved in small town politics, and they didn't. I don't think they'd be too keen on admitting it, but
they had a pretty good time.
Yeah. They didn't think they'd be breaking bread with folks that they were breaking bread with. We'll just leave it at that. But
and they'll always have Paris, Arkansas. Yeah. I had to work that in there somewhere. So where do we go? Where do we go
I
next?
think we'll stop at in the multi-center here to kind of cleanse your palate and get you back to neutral. So the darker one here is a coffee porter, and the lighter one is our Farmer Brown. So I'd have you start with the Farmer Brown, I think. And that's it's a London ale, fermented, Old English style brown. You'll get a little chocolatey note in there, and that all comes from the malt. So this is Troubadour's area. This is our malt house in Colorado. All of their malt is, again, steeped and kilned and roasted in the style of like malts in the big brewing world, but they've kind of got their own little spin on a lot of things. And the maltster out there is a former coffee roaster, so he's got quite a bit of experience there, and he's a big coffee fan still. So he works his magic on the malts for sure. So there's nothing else added to this. It's malt and yeast and hops. So there's a lot of people swear there's chocolate in there. I promise there's not.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's got a sweetness, but it's not like a cloying sweetness.
Right.
There's a little bit of fruit from the yeast. I'm thinking, it's not as clean as the California ale.
London's a little estery, and London also leaves a little bit behind. So the little bit of residual sweetness that you pick up is from the London ale, and those actually the two darker beers that we'll try are brewed with the same, or fermented with the same London ale yeast, which I'm a big fan of. It's a nice. Relatively neutral English ale yeast, and we've had really good luck with it.
Is that why they're so light on your tongue? Both of the dark beers are real light on your tongue versus a syrupy kind of a feel.
The mouthfeel, I think the mouthfeel is something that you manipulate with the different things that you add malt-wise. And so I don't add oatmeal I haven't done oatmeal beer in a while, but anything like that you would have an actual physical thing left behind by the oatmeal, and that produces a more kind of palatable, chunky mouthfeel.
Chewy.
Yes, chewy.
So if I were to try to replicate this grain bill with sort of more readily available malts, what are we talking about?
For the brown, we just start out with a Vienna base, and these go through. Boy, that's tough. So there's one called Encore, which produces kind of a burgundy reddish hue. It's a beautiful malt, and I couldn't tell you what you could replicate that one with. I would say look for a brown malt. Those are always really nice. They're the perfect stop between a caramel 120 kind of an area and a full-on roasted malt. So I don't use a brown in there, but I would say that the Encore is probably closest to that. The chocolate malts are what I use. I don't use for these two. I definitely don't have the full dark roasted or the black patent malts or anything like that involved. So I generally stop at the chocolate malts, and so that's really what they call it a Moonlight. From Troubadour, that's really where that stops. I have used black patent, and I do a lot in stouts and things like that, but I find that the lack of bitterness is definitely aided by stopping before you get too dark with the malts.
Yeah, there's nothing. Black patent is less sort of acrid than people usually think, but there's nothing sort of acrid in there. There's there's no ashtray in this at all.
Yeah, I don't think it has a place in a brown malt or a brown beer. So there's a little bit of roasty going on in the porter that you'll try next, but that I feel comes partially from the coffee and a little bit heavier on the roasted malts.
My wife, same thing. She would love that beer. She likes the darker beers. But she doesn't like a lot of acidity. She doesn't like a lot of bitterness, and so. Not saying that she likes just sweet beers, but that's nicely balanced, and she would like that a lot.
That you pick up in there is I get a little bit of raisin flavor in there, and that is definitely a characteristic of their malts. I find that a dried fruit, almost floral dried fruit combination comes out of their malt quite a bit. So it's a nice complement from the esters produced by the London ale.
There's a little bit of date in there, maybe, too, as well?
It's a nice profile. I really like it. So we call that one Farmer Brown for obvious reasons. I'm sitting on a farm. We ran out of good names that day, I guess.
That is one of the first 4 beers she made that we took to that Frost Fest, is that Farmer Brown. And she's probably made it 3 times since then. And is a big fan favorite.
It goes fast.
Yes, it does.
Oh, now I'm sipping the coffee beer. Wow.
Sportsmith Porter. And so that's a very classic English porter profile. Again, no oatmeal there, so you're not having a heavy mouthfeel. You'll probably pick up almost a peppery note, like a black pepper. And that actually comes from, there are many different ways to get coffee flavor into a beer, and I experimented with all of them. I think a lot of folks will brew the coffee and add it to to the beer before it's fermented or after sometimes. Some people like the extract flavors. Some people throw the beans in the boil. And I really find that coffee and the different layers of flavor that coffee comes with is really coaxed out very nicely by fermentation. And so I use whole beans, a pound per barrel, and they go right in a bag in the primary fermenter. There's no cooking them. They never get over 70 degrees or 75, however hot it decides to get. And I really find that it brings all the flavors we like out of coffee, but zero bitterness. So.
And does Fort Smith Coffee Roasters give you the same coffee every time? Is it the same blend?
We've tinkered around with different blends of roasts and things like that, and I've stuck mostly to Costa Rican, which they roast to about a medium for us, and it makes a nice espresso as well, so we use it in our house also, which is convenient.
It's a nice little trade we can do with them. They trade us coffee beans for kegs of beer because they sell coffee in the morning and beer at night.
Oh, there you go.
So we like Fort Smith Coffee Roasters. They're good friends.
It's really good. I've found that I made my favorite coffee beer that I made, I used just cracked coffee beans in the secondary.
Okay.
Sure. So similar. But I've tried using brewed coffee into beer, but I think that not having cooked those beans, you preserve a lot of those. Well, I mean, they're cooked in the way that they are roasted.
Sure.
Not boiled.
Yeah.
Not boiled. Yeah. But having that kind of preserves the roast. And Casey Letellier, who we mentioned before,
Sure.
when he was working at West Mountain, had a really good coffee beer on as well. But it's a really good balance. It doesn't scream coffee, but it's integrated well. If you're making a 5-gallon batch, how much coffee would you use?
I'd probably start with a cup of coffee beans. Like I said, I use a pound per barrel, which, the larger fermenter you're dealing with, the more efficient things are going to move in and out of your bag of whatever you've got in there. But I would start off with a cup full maybe, and I haven't ever put it in with hops before, but I'm not a big giant dry hopper. I have figured out recently that you can just dump the pellet hops into the fermenter, and I like that. I like not having the horrible bags to clean up. So I have been experimenting a little bit more, and there's I use whole cone hops for my main brewing and have missed out on a lot of hops because they're only available in pellets, or the pellet is what's available in my size of order, which is not 11-pound bales or 44-pound bales. Those hops would be in here forever if I ordered that much. But yeah, I like the whole beans right in the fermenter.
Well, but I think that not having access to what everybody else has access to, I think that forces you to be more creative, and you're coming up with stuff that nobody else maybe in the world is brewing here, at your house.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Blue Centennial, which you're not going to get a chance to taste today, but you might want to talk about that.
Yeah. So when Troubadour malt, or they make their malt, their two main base malts are Serenade, which is a Vienna style malt, and Pevek, which is a Pilsner style malt. And then there's Ballad, which is Vienna, a little bit roasted. And so their roasted versions of those malts, they call blue. So that's Blue Serenade and Blue Ballad. They still have diastatic power, not as much as the base malts, but they do have a healthy amount, very similar to the Heritage. And they create almost a brownish, greenish kind of, not green, but it's a very unique color that they extract out at and they just decided blue was the best thing to call it. So, it was quite the accident. I noticed that I had quite a bit of their blue malts sitting around, and I hadn't experimented with them very much. So, I had time and I had extra malt, so I went ahead and did a blue beer. And so it was just the Blue Serenade and the Blue Ballad, and I hopped it with just Centennial because I had. There was a sale.
We had a lot of Centennial hops, so that's what you used.
It was on sale or whatever, and so I called it Blue Centennial because that was easy. And it actually, ended up being somewhere between the Heritage Pale that you had, a brown, and an IPA. It's a crazy little. It's got a deep presence of that caramel kind of dark raisin sort of flavor that you picked up earlier, but also a very nice presence with the hops, but not overwhelming, not like you would have in an IPA. And it is hopped like an IPA when I brew. There are no dry hops, and it has been humongously popular. So we call it an American Blue Ale.
And from the first time we had it on, she immediately started making it again, and it went from one time on to staple for that instantly, and that was about 3 months ago. So, and I say a staple now, it's on all the time, and of course it's not on today. But it'll be on this weekend. Yeah, it's carbonating right now. It'll be on this weekend.
Troubadour was thrilled, though. They're pretty excited that we invented a beer style with them. So
I really do think it's the only blue ale being made in the country that we know of. So
certainly the only time I've ever heard of a malt called Blue. So you know.
Yeah. So we got 2 left.
So we have 2 left, and I'm going to have you go to the Citra Wit next. So this is a Belgian wit, and it's 5. No, I'm looking for the ABV.
Oh. 6.3.
Yeah, 6.3. We landed that ABV quite a bit, but so it's Colorado Antero wheat, and again Troubadour's Serenade base malt, and just a Belgian wit yeast. But there's it was hopped only with Citra hops, and then dry fruited with 5 different kinds of citrus peel, organic citrus peel from California. So we have grapefruit, lemon, lime, tangerine, and orange. And the inspiration for that was it was so gray for so long and cloudy and rainy and dingy around here. We wanted it to feel a little bit more like summer, so we made something to drink.
It's a little bit of sunshine right there in the glass. And I think it held the head, it's had a nice rocky head that stayed there for a long time.
Yeah.
Wow, well, each of these beers has been really clean, delicious, and but that's really nice. When I get stumped for descriptors, let me talk about. We'll talk about. Did you talk about the yeast, or did you talk about your approach to fermentation temperature, because that's important as well?
So our approach to fermentation temperature is the temperature our room will hold. So we don't have jacketed fermenters. We don't have a glycol system. The way we structured the inside of that building, and we can walk through there before you leave so you can see it, but it's an 18 by 20 building. So we designed about a 10 by 6 room, and that's our fermenter room, and those are all 8-inch insulated rooms, floor and ceiling and walls. And so the walk-in cooler is the same, only it's, what would that be left, 8 by 10?
10, yeah.
And so we use mini-split air conditioning units, and in the cold room we use a cool bot to trick it into thinking it's always too warm. So it stays on and keeps us at 40 very reliably, actually. And then we've got the other room set at ale temperatures. So it hovers between 68 and 72 like ales are supposed to. The primary difference in our seasonal temperatures comes from cooling water. So we cool with a plate chiller with groundwater. And so, as most home brewers know, the ability to do that in the summer drops dramatically. So we go from barely being able to turn the water on in the winter and cooling it to 60, and then being able to barely let the beer out in the summer and cooling it maybe to 75. You can only get as cool as the groundwater, and it's going to be about 5 degrees hotter than that. So I do summer beers in the summer for that reason primarily. I love dark beers and beers that are traditionally brewed and served in the winter, but definitely summer is more friendly for the Hefeweizens, and the Saisons are year-round for us.
So a lot of times when we bring on guest taps here, we ask for lagers and box and stuff that we can't make. And luckily Stone Store's been able to help us out with that several times.
So do y'all have a well, or you're on city water? Or?
We're on rural water, so that's somewhere between a well and city water. They have several standpipes around the county, and they pull off of that, and a few reservoir lakes and things like that. So
we filter the daylights out of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Get all the chlorine out of it. We've
All water treatment in this county is done with chlorine. So when you say there's no bleach in the brewery, and then you get bleach coming out of the faucets, it's kind of tough. So we installed a whole building filter, and it's just been the difference between night and day for us. We actually lost a few beers from overchlorination of our water. Wow, it was pretty insane.
No, before we got the whole house. Before we were just doing inline, like RV inline filters, and we had to go to the whole house because we lost a couple of batches. Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised you don't like drill a well just for the cooling water.
That's smart.
No, in the summertime I have the same problem. My tap water comes out at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so you can't get lower than that. So I use a pond pump and recirculate ice water through my wort chiller. So, being a home brewer, I can do things like that. But so that's delicious. The citrus. I don't know if I would have told you if you hadn't told me about the 5 different kinds of but
picking them out individually.
But there is a nice kind of fresh citrus character that comes from the beer, and it's it'd be wonderful sitting outside on a sunny day.
Pretty popular. Folks have said, "Hey, that's a great Blue Moon."
Oh man! I'm like, Liz would just love to hear you say that. It tastes like Blue Moon, but only better.
Well, I mean that's good.
Hey, we'll take all
beer.
the compliments. We'll take all. Every time I hear that her beer is better than somebody else's, I'm okay with that.
Whatever it tastes like to people, it's just about gone, and it went very fast.
We did blow through it.
Okay, the last beer.
Is Saison Serenade, and so this one is all Serenade malt, and it attenuated the heck out of itself. It's an 8% Saison, and it is only Serenade malt, so it's a single malt, and very minimally hopped. I don't like to hop during the brew a lot. I like to keep the bitterness away from the Saisons that I do. So little to no bittering hops, and then as we went through brewing, just a little bit of hops, and then we dry hopped with Mosaic in this one. So,
well, cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
Thank you. Nobody's talking.
This is the point where I cut out where I tried to drink from my microphone.
So I know because I worked the front of the house for Liz that when she puts a Saison on the board and takes a picture of it, puts it on Facebook Thursday afternoon, I know there's going to be 2 or 3 dozen people come from Northwest Arkansas, 2 or 3 dozen people coming from Little Rock, just because the word Saison is on the board. If anything, all of her beers are amazing, but I think she's really well known for her Saisons.
I'm trying to talk, Liz, while I try to think of descriptors. There's something that doesn't hit you till the very end. It's like what is that? So I have to think some more.
Go ahead. So Serenade is such a simple but such a complex malt to me. It really there's a little bit of almost floral, like a jasmine presence to it, especially on the nose. Even when I'm brewing, it just smells beautiful, and it's a really I attribute 80% of our success to these malts. I mean, they really lend themselves to different flavor profiles. They're very unique. None of them are plain, and none of them are boring or average or just what you would find in a run-of-the-mill beer. And that was our goal. And so we really settled in very nicely with them. We made sure before we made the decision to grow that they could grow with us and that they would be able to supply us still when we got bigger. That was one of my big concerns growing and working with small malt houses, was that we wouldn't be able to grow with them. And they promised we will. So.
Well, this is very nice. It's a very spicy, kind of peppery. Sure. There's some spice that I probably am not educated enough to recognize.
French Saison blend ale yeast. It's $5.99, I think, is the White Labs code for it. I really enjoy the different characteristics, and again, besides wanting to avoid bitterness from the hops, that yeast will mask just about any hop that you try to throw at it. So it likes to do its own thing. So I find that's something that kind of rides along with the things that it provides, like spiciness or floral characteristics, only enhance those things. So.
Is there some cantaloupe in there? Or am I crazy?
There's no. That would be the Mosaic.
I mean the flavor.
So that was dry hop with Mosaic, and so you'll probably pick up some melon flavors from that.
Wow, that's really nice. And again, it fermented at the same temperature that everything else is.
Yes, absolutely. And the yeast, the different strains of yeast, will crank it up to their own preferred spot. You know, as you know, as a home brewer, they do what they want. It's just kind of a cooperation with us. Yeah, in the summertime, they go a little warmer because they start a little warmer, so they've got a little bit of a jump start. So we expect and kind of embrace the esters and things like that come from a warmer fermentation. But I find that, so the beers that really can't take that, I really kind of back off of or try to do more carefully. It's hard with the pales because there's a lot of diacetyl produced when you start off hot. So they need an extra few days for diacetyl rest in the summer, and a little more attention paid to them than in the winter. But that's really about the biggest change that I have to make in the summer.
Well, I tell you, we're out of beers, and we're at about the time limit that I usually cut these things off. We could talk for as long as you wanted to, probably. I can't. I'm really impressed with the beers, and I love the location. And I can see us driving down here with some friends on a weekend afternoon, and spending a couple 3 hours just hanging out.
You wouldn't be alone in that endeavor. You'd have friends. We have a lot of people that really enjoy it. We have a lot of outside tables and an outside deck and the beautiful view of the mountains. It's a lot of people sitting and have a couple of beers. It works out for them.
I'll wait till there's crops on.
Yeah, then you'll be doing a little shopping too.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks again to Liz and Preston. I can't wait to go back to Prestonrose to eat what comes out of the ground there and to see how Liz integrates what she grows into her beer. And if you're driving I-40 across Arkansas, you need to make a little side trip to see him. Take a left at Russellville, I think is how you get down there. Look up Paris, Arkansas in your googly GPS thingy and visit Prestonrose Farm and Brewery. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form at basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check all that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing, The Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering, and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. Get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. You can find our logbooks. We can track and log up to 50 batches of beer, and every order gets some stickers. Check all that out at basicbrewingshop.com. Don't forget you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.